Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we are talking about the 2028 presidential race, and yes, I know it is only July of 2025, recording this video on July 25th, but still Emerson has released their 2025 July national poll, and it does go over a lot of important things going on with President Trump and the state of the United States right now. Also offers a brief glimpse into 2028, so I'm going to break it all down here and talk about it and what I find fascinating about this poll. So in Emerson's newest college survey poll found that voters find President Trump with a 46% approval rating to 47% disapproval rating. Since last month's national poll, President Trump's approval and disapproval rating increased by 1 percentage point. Just to give you a timeline here, back in January, Trump sat at 49 to 41 approve. By March, that went down to 47-45 approve for Trump. April, it hit even. June was 46-45 disapprove. July, 47-46 disapprove. So the margins actually didn't change from June to July, just that the disapprove went up 1 point and approve also went up 1 point. About 6 months into the second Trump administration, the president's approval rating has stabilized in the mid-40s, while his disapproval rating has steadily increased about 1 point each month since the inauguration and now stands at 47%, said Spencer Kimball, executive director of Emerson College Polling. The president's approval rating is strongest among men, with 50% or 53% of white voters at 52%, voters at 70%, and at 53%, where Trump's approval is underwater among independents at 38%, women at 40%, Hispanics at 38%, and black voters at 25%. Tracking some key questions of voter attitudes on whether they approve or disapprove of President Trump's handling of key issues were asked. The highest approval was on immigration, with the public split 45% approved to 46% disapprove, and disapproval is the highest in the economy, 51% disapprove, 41% approve, and tariff policy, 50% disapprove, 36% approve. That's going to be a big problem, especially if that trend continues for 2026, as the economy is usually one of the top most important issues in every single election going back for a long time now. In the United States, the economy, tariffs, affordability, usually all kind of clumps into one, and if President Trump's underwater by 10 points, come 2026, that could hurt the Republicans a lot in that election. That being said, though, 50-day poll, 37-48, approve, disapprove. That was overall plus 11 or minus 11 for Trump on the economy. By 100 days, it was 37-49. That was negative 12 points. 6 month at minus 10 for Trump. Believe it or not, minus 10 is the best, according to this poll, that Trump has done on the economy, which is still not great, but it does show that it is trending a little bit in the right direction for Trump, but still certainly not good enough for the president and the president's party. On cryptocurrency, President Trump, most recent poll, is down about 14%, 25% approve, 39% disapprove. Seems to be a lot more undecided vote and such on that one. Immigration, Trump started out at 48-40 at the 50-day mark. 100-day marker was 45-44. 6-month mark is now 46-45 disapprove. The Russia-Ukraine war, Trump is currently down 10 to 37-47. Israel-Hamas war, 38-46. Disapproval of Trump. Deportation policy shows 43-48 approved to disapprove, so more disapprove in that one. And tariff policy, this is probably the most starking one for Trump, 36-50 for Trump on tariffs. Still not certainly very good. It goes into more details on that as well. A very important one for the 2026 midterm general election ballot, 44% support the Democratic candidate for Congress, while 42% support the Republican, 14% are currently undecided. A majority of voters, 62%, said they are extremely motivated to vote in next year's general election for Congress. 16% are very motivated, 14% somewhat motivated. So just to give you an idea, that 2% Democratic lead for the House, the Republicans won the national House vote 50.6 to 47.8. The Republicans won by roughly 2.8% nationally. So a Democrat 2-point win would be about a 4.8% shift from 2024 to 2026 in terms of the results, and I can actually show you what that would look like. So the Republicans hold 220 House seats, Democrats hold 215. I'm going to shift the map by 4.8% just to show you what it would look like based on the current composition of the U.S. House, and that's a big important if. Based on the current composition, the Democrats would win the House roughly 229 House seats. Republicans would have 206, with a lot of very close narrow flips and narrow holds on this map based on the 2024 results. So that's obviously the most recent election we have to go off of. That's why Republicans are having conversations about trying to redistrict in states like Ohio and Missouri and Texas to gain some extra seats, because on the current House map, if the Democrats do this, they'll likely win the House by a pretty good, considerable amount. If the Republicans can redistrict some of these House races, that may cut into the Democrats' margins, and Republicans may be able to barely hold on to the House there. So that's that side of things. Now to 2028, where they did a few potential early matchups based on national polls on the top contenders for 2025. They included matchups of Vice President J.D. Vance, the Republican vice president, for all of the matchups, and 3 of the top Democratic candidates as well, with Pete Buttigieg, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and California Governor Gavin Newsom. They found that for Vance versus Buttigieg, which in some polls is the most likely matchup as of right now, Vance holds a 1-point lead over Buttigieg, 44% to 43%, with 13% undecided. For Vance versus AOC, Vance has 44%, AOC 41%. For Newsom versus Vance, which going back 4 years, or going back, to the summertime, 2024, Vance versus Newsom looked like it could be a potential matchup, maybe perhaps the most likely matchup for 2028. It shows Vance with a 3-point national lead over Newsom at 45 to 42, with 13% undecided. This is a very, very interesting thing here. For one, in every single one of these polls, 13%, 15%, and 13% of voters say they're still undecided. So obviously it's July of 2025. This isn't until 2028. A lot of Americans are undecided on 2028, as the 2024 presidential election just happened, and we're a long ways away from actual serious conversations being underway about the 2028 election. At least you have to wait for 2026 and the midterms to go by before these elections are going to start kicking up. But it does show that at very least, J.D. Vance seems to start out with a floor of support of about 44 to 45%, which is still a pretty decent standing, especially considering in the poll, President Trump's approval rating is down about 1 point, but on the issues, especially the economy, President Trump's doing a lot worse on the issues than his national approval rating would suggest. And Vance, likely being Trump's vice president, would not be doing all that differently from President Trump. But Vance still leading in all these matchups is probably a good sign for him starting out. Buttigieg starting out at 43% suggests he's probably the most electable Democrat of these 3. AOC would probably have the most enthusiasm among Democratic voters, but Buttigieg would probably have an easier time winning over independent voters, would be an assumption. Gavin Newsom is someone that's very interesting because a lot of Republicans really don't like Newsom, but a lot of Democrats do like him. So it could be interesting if he's the nominee and he's been trying to rebrand in recent months. Would he be able to get some independent voters? That'd be an interesting conversation as well. But again, not too much takeaway, but I thought of something interesting to go over. A key takeaway from the ballot test is about 13% of the electorate remain persuadable, while 87% have already settled in on their party preference, Kimball noted. And it also goes into questions about how much do you trust people to give you reliable information. 39% of your immediate family members, a great deal. Another 43% say a fair amount. 14 and 5, about 19% say not really from family members. Whereas President Trump and RFK Jr. has about 50%, a great deal of information, to about 50% not really. U.S. Center for Disease Control, about 49% reliable, 51% not reliable. And President Trump has about 45% reliable, or 47% reliable, and then about 53% unreliable. So as for 2028, there's only been a handful of polls done, and really there's nothing to take away from. Again, we're still very early on, but Emerson College, the most recent, I'd say most reliable poll given so far. Overton Insights did a poll from back in June that showed Vance versus Harris, with Harris leading by 3 points, and for also showed Donald Trump, doing a rematch of 2024, what that would look like. Trump still led by 3, but again, there's not really too much to take away from that. On Point SoCal Strategies showed from back in December that Harris would beat Vance by 2, whereas Vance would beat Newsom by 3, Vance would beat Shapiro by 3, and Vance would defeat Whitmer by about 7. But again, lots of undecided vote, not too much to take away from that. Still, though, I thought it was very interesting to go over. On the Democratic side of things, the current primary polling right now, Kamala Harris still leads in the race to the White House average, even after a recent Atlas Intel poll, which showed Harris falling down, I believe, to 4th place, with AOC being in 2nd and Gavin Newsom being in 3rd. And now AOC only leads the national average by about 4%. And honestly, this is something I did expect to happen. After a presidential election, the Democratic or Republican nominee that was just at the top of the ticket usually leads the early polling for the next presidential election, as that's the candidate most people have heard of. But typically within a year or two, those numbers start to go away a bit, and new candidates for the next election tend to emerge. And that seems to be happening with Harris already, as her support has gone down a lot in recent years. Or in recent months, excuse me. With speculation of Harris running for governor as well, the chances of her running in 2028 are not as high as they were a few months ago. Without Harris in the race, it does have a poll where Pete Buttigieg starts out by 13.1%. Gavin Newsom is 12.6%. Then we see AOC at 9.8%. So it looks like Buttigieg and Newsom start out as the early leaders in that regard. AOC starts out in third. Tim Walz would then be in fourth. So, and then I'll also show the Republican side really briefly. If J.D. Vance decides to run, it's pretty much his nomination to lose. He starts out with 49.1%, and in all likelihood would be the Republican nominee. I hope you enjoyed this video, though. I hope you found this interesting. Make sure to like if you did. Also, make sure to hit subscribe if you really enjoyed this video. And stay tuned, as I have more videos coming out every single day, just like this one. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you in a future video.